Thank you.
We'll start here in a moment. I think I had some difficulty logging on, and perhaps a couple others did as well.
Thanks for the dinner break, Mr. President.
Yeah, we should do that more often. We're just waiting for Director Jones, and we'll give him a couple minutes here.
Do you want me to call Director Jones?
Would you please? So I know I had some trouble finding the link, so perhaps he did as well.
Jim, I'm going to get something to drink, but I can hear you. Okay.
Okay. All right. Looks like we're all here. I'd like to welcome everyone to the July 20th, 2021 board meeting for the Menlo Park Fire Protection District. Prior to this meeting, we had a closed session, and there are no reportable items from that closed session. So, Michelle, would you
Oh, yeah, thank you.
please call the roll?
Director Bernstein? Director Bernstein, you're on mute.
I'm present.
Thank you. Director Jones?
Here.
Director Corrali?
Present.
Director Solano?
Here.
Director McLaughlin?
Here. All right, would you please rise and join me in the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
Public.
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, as I previously mentioned, there are no reportable items from our closed session. Michelle, is there any public comment?
Anybody has any public comments? You can press *9 or use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, no public comment.
All right, well, thank you for that. Our first item this evening is a report of the fire chief. And I just want to note this is Chief Schaefer's first board meeting with us as interim chief. So welcome.
Thanks, President McLaughlin, members of the board. For the chief's report this evening, the first item is the management audit. We had sent out the management audit in June. We received one response, which we felt was inadequate for our needs. We had another response of another company that wanted to wait until we had a permanent fire chief, and then we had two that did not respond. So we have reformatted the RFP, and we're going to send it out to a wider audience, and we'll be bringing that back to strategic planning at their meeting, in the committee meeting on August 3rd. The second item was some temporary acting positions. Your movement of myself up to the interim position opened up a deputy position, and I moved Chief Navarro into the acting deputy position, and then brought Chief Coyle in from the battalion position up to a acting division chief in charge of operations. And things seem to be running pretty well so far. So all's good on that front. With the town of Atherton, I sat down and met with Chief McCulley, who is the chief of police there, along with our disaster response manager, Ryan Zolikoffer. And we discussed the ADAP drill, which is on September 11th, and how we can support them with that drill. And I think we have some good things in motion, and Ryan's going to take the lead on that. So we'll get more on that as it gets closer. And at the pinning on the 30th of June, the board had named our new museum at Station 6 a Chapel-Holman Museum. And I just want to let you know that the plaque was installed and it's up, and the chief is aware of that, and it looks very nice. There was some question on whether it was perfectly level or not. I think we're determining that tomorrow, but it looks really good, and that was really nice of you. The directors did that, so thank you.
All right, I had a chance to go by there yesterday and take a look at it, and from the street, peeking over the fence, it looks great. Any questions for Chief Schaefer? Chuck, you're muted, Chuck.
I'm sorry, I have workmen in my house and they're making a lot of noise, so I unmuted myself. I wanted to ask about the tender, the water tender, whether you'd had a chance to research that and find out if we bought it and how much it cost if we did.
Yes, Director Bernstein, we did purchase the water tender, and we purchased it for just under $100,000. I think it was $99,999.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I think there's just a few things the mechanical division has to do to it. But other than that, it should be ready to go pretty soon.
Any other questions? All right. Moving on, that brings us to the consent calendar. There are 3 items. Does anyone want to pull anything off? If not, is there a motion to accept?
So moved. I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I just wanted to make note of the number of meeting minutes that are included in this. I think that's a record for the fire district. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 meetings are included here, which is things have been quite busy. Anyway.
They have. All right, Michelle, would you please call the vote?
Sure. I don't see any public comments on that item either. So Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley. Director Crawley,
Aye.
thank you. Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right, that brings us to our first regular item. Number 5, approve revisions to policy 205, travel and reimbursable expense. Just by way of background, this came up when we approved the purchase of the truck, and that contract included a provision to send employees to the factory to receive familiarization training and just a chance to interact with the people that actually built it. The board asked Francine to adjust that policy to take travel related to the purchase of that equipment out of the contract and leaving that at the discretion of the chief. The chief can still send employees back, but if the contract specified 2 employees and in the chief's view, 1 was enough, or perhaps 3 or 4 were required, it just gives more flexibility and more accountability for sending people back to the factory. So Francine, I believe you drafted those revisions. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so just, so as you said, it was just to not allow or disallow embedding travel in a contractual agreement. And then the other one was the reporting. The board asked for itemized travel expenses. And so I included language in the policy to have the chief report out semi-annually for each half of the fiscal year, travel expenses that were incurred in that respective part of the fiscal year.
All right, any questions for Francine? Chuck?
Excuse me, I had 2 comments. I think this is very good. And I was not one who asked for a report out, but so I had 2 comments. One is, if we're going to ask for a report, I think it should have a date that it's due, or a meeting by which it would be presented or something, just so that there's no ambiguity, because in fact, somebody could comply 5 years later, and obviously that's not the intent. So I just think it's, as long as you're going to ask for a report, you should have a date on it. The only other comment I was going to make is, I thought it might be helpful to say that that the authorization for travel was consistent with budget constraints or something like that. I'd like to acknowledge the budget in here somehow. But I mean, these are not things I would die for. I just suggesting that I think it would be helpful in terms of guidelines.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion on this item? I would just, Chuck, if you want to make a motion to approve with the, I don't know if you want to suggest some reporting dates, perhaps in line with the fiscal year, and then just 6 months out from that.
Yeah, it's not, I didn't care what the date was. I just thought we should have a date. And I basically said, I suggested July 15th and January 15th, but that's, January's, yeah, maybe what would be a normal thing for this? I mean, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days?
I think 15 days is quite short, and sometimes we might not get invoices timely, but I think within 30 days, that should be manageable. So within 30 days of the end of the fiscal year reporting period.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we approve these changes and that we add dates 30 days, either just that wording 30 days from the end of the period, or specify a date. And the second thing would be to have a notation that it's approved within the budget constraints.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? All right, Michelle, would you call the vote?
Yes, if we have any public comments, now would be the time. And seeing none, Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. Right, that brings us to item 6, discuss returning to in-person and/or hybrid public board meetings. There was no staff report on this. This issue was considered at the last HR committee meeting. And being the chair, I'll just share, the results of that meeting. Apparently, there's a bill in the legislature that would require interactive meetings as we do now over Zoom or some equivalent type platform. Or Stephen, I see you're.
Yeah, that's inaccurate, actually, Director McLaughlin, as presently drafted, and there's still chance for it to be amended, but it's late in the day. The bill you're referring to would not apply to the fire district.
Right, I'm making reference to it, and I was going to make the observation that even though we would not be subject to that legislation, we could voluntarily. Is that
That is
not
correct. I
accurate?
apologize for interrupting you.
Okay, thank you. Even though we would not be subject to the requirement, I believe they had a population threshold of 250,000, which is greater than our service area. We could voluntarily, we could elect to comply with it. The discussion went along the lines of, is this something, has this Zoom platform enhanced our transparency? Has it made us more accessible to the public we serve? Does it allow more people to observe and participate in our meetings rather than have to go to a fixed site location and attend a physical meeting? I think the discussion largely ended with the idea that that there is benefit, to having the meetings conducted in this type of a platform. There was also some discussion about how do we control participation. Presumably there'd be the same limits that apply to someone that appears in person at a physical meeting, that those same rules would apply to someone participating in an electronic platform. So with that, Rob, I don't know if you have anything to add. I don't know that we came up with a firm recommendation, but rather we wanted to discuss it with the board.
I'd like to ask Chief Schaefer for his recommendation.
Director, so as of now, our IT department is speaking with some different entities about a two-way Zoom for the board meetings. We haven't come up with the proper way to do that just yet, but IT is working on that. So I don't necessarily have an answer whether or not that's going to be able to be done by, say, next meeting. But I'm sure we can get it done at some point if the board chooses to have a two-way communication through the board meeting, or if you want to just have a YouTube feed, which would be live. And then if someone wanted to report to the board and be part of the conversation, then they'd have to come to the board meeting physically if you were meeting physically, and that would be up to the board.
Thank you, Chief.
Virginia?
I have a quick question for Steve. Given the variants being kind of out there, is there a different timeline that they're looking at now in Sacramento in terms of the Brown Act? So I think that at one of your briefings, Steve, I think this was in, either May or March or a few months ago, you had mentioned that we were all going to be going back to in person, for example, in October. I'm just wondering if you've heard of anything else. I mean, I know someone who actually has the Delta variant and he was fully vaccinated and he's in ICU right now. So I don't know if if the whole Delta variant situation is going to prolong this type of meeting setting. I mean, not that it's not necessarily directly affecting what we do in the future, but I'm just curious if you've heard anything else about that and how it might affect the Brown Act.
Sure, and I'm sorry to hear about your friend. There has been no word out of Sacramento that would indicate a change to the governor's earlier direction and written executive order that the rules in effect during the pandemic would cease on September 30th, which means that as of October 1st, we would be in the situation of having to comply with pre-pandemic Brown Act rules, which would not prohibit the kind of technological endeavor that Chief Schaefer has described, but
Right.
would require that board members comply with the telephonic rule noticing rules that were in effect before the pandemic. So that's a long-winded answer. The short answer is no news out of Sacramento.
Okay, thank you. I just would think we should probably keep an eye on that if something changes.
You know, the other
For sure.
issue before us is when do we go back to physical meetings? Do we want to do it for our August meeting or push it out to September? My preference would be to start it next month, but again, it'll be the will of the board here.
Well, so given that San Mateo County is recommending that people wear masks indoors, would we be doing that too?
You know, I'm not familiar with the county guidelines right now. If there was a conflict, then of course, you know, we'll adhere to whatever the safe practice is. If it's not, if having a physical meeting in August is contrary to, you know, either county directive or then you know, we would push it out.
I mean, that's just
Yeah.
today, Jim. That's why I just keep saying this is like an evolving, moving target thing. So I just want us to keep abreast of it. But I think, yeah, I think the sooner we can go back in person, the better. But I know that San Mateo County is recommending that if you're meeting with someone indoors, then you should be wearing a mask.
Rob first and then Chuck.
Yeah, I think it was Chief Schaefer's recommendation that closer to September would be a little bit better for you, Chief. Is that true? Did I read you right?
If we were to use the two-way communication,
Chief, your video.
September, maybe October, if there won't be the two-way communication and
Chief, your video connection was off there. I don't know if you're back with us.
sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
That's much better.
Okay, sorry. So I don't think that the in-person meetings are dependent on our IT. We can still record the meetings as we did in the past. The only difference would be how long it would take us to put together the system so we could have the interoperability if that's what the board wanted. At any time when the board wants to get back to in-person meetings, we can do that. And then as soon as we can do what the board wants to do as far as interoperability, two-way or one-way, we could put it on YouTube and have live stream. We can record it and post it as we did in the past with the meetings, or we can try and do a two-way Zoom up to the board. But as far as the in-person meetings, I'm not sure that would correspond to when we're able to do a two-way.
All right, Chuck.
I'm sorry, Rob was first.
I think Rob's done.
Oh, okay. Two things. One is I think it's a good idea to continue what we've been doing. We've certainly had a much bigger audience than we've ever had in our history. And it's a lot more convenient for someone to come for a single item because they never know when it's going to come up on the agenda. And it's the kind of thing where they could be doing something else at home while they had it on in the background, and when it got close to that agenda item, they could, turn the camera back on and join in. So I would encourage us to have as broad a reach as we possibly can. But the timing of a meeting causes me to ask a question of our council here. If the board went back to in-person meetings, could a board member or several board members actually attend remotely under the bill that you're talking about?
So Director Bernstein, are you talking about before October 1st or after October 1st?
Is that? I can't
Before October 1st, the rules that we are operating in today apply, which is there are no Brown Act rules that limit remote telephonic attendance by anybody, and you can decide yourselves how you wish to attend. After October 1st.
You could have hybrid, and you could have both things. A board member attend, one could attend in person and one could attend remotely.
That is correct. That becomes a technological challenge, not a legal Brown Act issue.
Okay.
After October 1st, that technological challenge still remains as applied to the public, but the rules for board members are that if you are not going to attend in person, your location must be A, agendized publicly in advance, and B, must be open to the public so that the public can join you at your remote location and participate from the same location that you are participating from. And the third requirement is that a majority of the board be within the jurisdiction, the boundaries of the district. And so that's the rules would apply to the 5 of you after October 1st. The rules for the public, you, as was just indicated, you could say we're just doing an in-person meeting. And if you'd like to participate, you can come to our boardroom, assuming that works for the county health department, or you can create some kind of a hybrid model that the chief was discussing.
So let me ask then in another way. I think I understand, but I'd like to confirm. If a board member were reticent to attend a meeting for health reasons, up till October 1st, that person could attend remotely and there's no problem. After October 1st, that person would have to go back to the old rules about posting a meeting wherever, at the person's house or wherever it was, that would be available to the public.
That's correct. Before October 1st, that board member could attend, no problem, as you said, no problem under the law, so long as the district will accommodate and can accommodate such participation. Right now, if you, for instance, were on Zoom and the other 4 members were not, but sitting around on a dais in a conference room, it's a technological issue of how to loop you into the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Right, after hearing the discussion, then I would like to propose that
Jim?
Robert, I didn't see your hand.
I'm using the technological hand, which you may not have been able to see.
Yeah.
But that leads me to my comments. I think that the first question is what's the room capacity over at Station 1? Will we be in the conference room or will we be in the bay where the fire trucks are? Because did anybody know the capacity over there in our meeting room?
Chief, I don't know if you know offhand, 20 to 30.
I don't know offhand, but I know our fire marshal's on and he may have a good idea. Chief Johnson, are you there?
I am. The room's actually set at 49, but that would be standing room. So it depends on the number of seats we put in there with the setup. So I might have to see what our setup is to determine the occupant load.
Thank you. So that leads into the other question is, say for example, right now, I think there's about 24 people that's online. And in the past, we haven't had that many, but who knows, the interest may be so high, people may might want to show up. So my concern is that if we just get 30 people in the room, how will we safeguard not only them, but ourselves? I mean, when you got that many people in a 49 room capacity and that standing room only, we're gonna be up on each other like ants going up an anthill. And so is that safe enough for us, or is that as a board member or for the people that's gonna come here? So that's a question. That's something that need to really be answered. Or will we limit the number of people who can come besides the 5 board members, the chief and his staff? Will that be a limitation on that and everybody else has to go on Zoom? I think those are the questions that really need to be answered before we say, oh, we're gonna meet next month or any month thereafter in person. I know I hear the legal requirements, but I think what goes along with that legal requirement, because as Virginia said, the variances, I mean, even in California, the cases are going up with the new variants, and other parts of the country, it's just getting 7 of the states in this country is exceeding whatever the expectation of where it should be. So, I'm just fearful of the fact that somebody come in there from the outside and they get infected because we're talking and they're listening and we're spraying everything everywhere on them. So, I mean, what is the room configuration going to look like? It's something that I guess what I'm saying that we really need to kind of take under consideration. And if we can limit people from coming in, the public from coming into that space, and how far distance do we have to be? I know I got my shot. I'm assuming everybody else got their shots, and but you never know with this new variants coming on. People with shots are getting not in great numbers, but they are getting impacted. So that's all my comments. Thank you.
All right. After listening to the discussion and the evolving nature of this disease, perhaps we wait until the October meeting. That gives the IT people time to put together a platform so that if there's any of the directors don't want to attend in person, that they're able to participate actively. I would like to see us move beyond the conference call type participation that we've had in the past. So I would ask the chief, perhaps the IT people could look at what would that look like? If even after the October 1st date, if a director elected not to participate in person, is there a Zoom type platform that could be used for them to participate? So is there any discussion around that, or is that have I captured the will of the board? Virginia?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to delay, kind of delay moving back now that after hearing everyone and their concerns to October as well. And as you said, it'd give us some time to prepare. And it'll also give us time to see what the evolving nature of the Delta variant is and what kind of updates and regulations there might be. I think it's going to be almost a daily situation, or well, maybe not daily, but frequent situation. I mean, the person that I was referring to who has this after being fully vaccinated, he contracted it from someone and his daughter got it. So 3 people had it. So that's not even in this state. I mean, he lives here, but he can't even come back. But it just worries me that, maybe we are in this state more cautious, but others may not be. But you just in maybe other areas, I don't know. I think maybe time is our friend at this point for various reasons.
All right, Chuck.
I wanted to ask our general counsel a question also with respect to the ability in a public meeting to require vaccination for attendance. Is that permissible?
So the short answer to your question is yes, but you must have exceptions for folks who require accommodations for either religious or health reasons. That's the short answer. There is a longer answer. And the idea that it would be disconnected from district policies with regards to its own employees may present an additional wrinkle, whether you have a different policy for staff as opposed to members of the public. So it's not a simple question.
So is there,
I just want to, and is that regulated primarily by state law then, or is this under federal law?
Both.
Both. Okay, thank you.
Robert, and I brought up the screen that shows me the electronic hand, Robert. So
okay,
I will look for that.
I'm just trying to look at protocol, that's all. Kind of following a little bit along what Chuck just brought up, it appears to me that hypothetically, okay, we all back in, okay, and if we can't prevent people from, or we can't state to people that they have to be vaccinated to come in, per se, for the most part, then the room can get packed. And sometimes there are hot items where people do come. How do we handle that? I mean, are we is it locationally wise? I'm not sure how we'll be able to space people out in that our conference room at Station 1 adequately enough to be feeling comfortable enough to have a room full of folks. So will there be limitations, number of people we would have who could come? And would that be discriminatory? And I'm sure it would be. It sounds like it would be. And do we want to run the risk of that? So something to take under consideration, because it seems like the laws that are getting ready to happen in September, as Steve talked about, there won't be any choice. You either have to come in, or you have to post at your house and let all your neighbors know that you're having a meeting. And I'm not comfortable with that part. So.
All right, those are all great points. I would ask, the chief to perhaps consider, this, if when we have physical meetings, is there a location other than the classroom that would allow us to, spread out? I don't know how disruptive it is to, the operations to use the bay there at Station 1 or one of the other locations, but if you could give that some thought, again, keeping in mind how this is evolving, and I think those are all good points. So, any further discussion on this, or just to summarize, then I believe we're agreed that if the status quo remains, our first in-person physical meeting would be the October meeting. And in the interim, the chief and his staff and Stephen will be evaluating, the nature of both the rules and regulations from the county, state, feds, and the chief can work with his IT people and work on the platforms that we would use, the electronic platform, and consider the best venue for our meetings so that we could appropriately distance ourselves, and anybody attending the meetings could be distanced as well. So if there's nothing further on that, I'll move on. All right, that brings us to item number 7. Consider revisions to the fire chief class description. This was first considered by the HR committee, so I'd like to address it before I ask Francine to share her staff report with us. This has been pending for a couple of months now, and the issue that's been discussed at the committee level is, the chief's position has been designated historically, traditionally, as a safety position. CalPERS has two broad categories: safety, which are, your sworn peace officers, firefighters, and others whose duties expose them to a rigorous job environment, a hazardous, dangerous work environment, versus miscellaneous, which would be everyone else. The safety retirement comes with substantially higher benefit. An employee is able to retire at a younger age, at a higher percentage of their pay than a miscellaneous employee is. When we first started this process of selecting a new chief, that prompted me to look at the job description, and I felt that it wasn't sufficient to support the safety position designation. So we discussed it at our, it would have been the May HR committee meeting. We engaged Francine on this and asked her to look at what are other agencies doing. And again, I'll ask her to share her findings with us in a moment. But after going through that, I came to the conclusion that if we're going to continue to have that position as a safety position, that it needed to meet the requirements that are imposed by statute and CalPERS to qualify for a safety position. To do otherwise would make it a miscellaneous position, which now takes us outside of the professional firefighter classifications. It could be, it would be more of a city manager, where you could have, it wouldn't require the skill, training, and experience that a firefighter professional would bring to the job. So overlaying this, of course, is our ADA requirements. And we discussed this at our last meeting. There are some reasonable accommodations that could be made to an individual, things such as hearing aids or eyeglasses, or, it would be very individualized, and that those ADA requirements overlay all of that. So with that, Robert, you're on the HR committee with me. I don't know if you have any comments before I hand it off to Francine.
Well, Jim, you've covered the whole thing. I know that Chuck had sent us an email regarding he wanted some of the emergency preparedness and some of the civilian or CERT groups covered there with some overall type training generalizations. And Chuck, when you reviewed the packet, did we address those issues that you had previously?
Yes, I thought it was covered well. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you, Chuck, for providing us with that feedback. That's the only thing I think you've said it all, Jim. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rob. With that lead up, I'll ask Francine to address the staff report she prepared.
Okay, good evening, directors. Director McLaughlin summed it up quite well. This class description was brought to the June 15th board meeting, and at that meeting it wasn't approved, but we did get some really good feedback from the board requesting some revisions or some additional research. So per the board request, the Human Resources Committee surveyed additional special districts and made some further changes and edits to the class description. So in total, we surveyed 13 fire departments and 14 class descriptions within these departments. One of the departments was requested, or one of the position descriptions was requested by Director Crawley. It was City of Palo Alto's Director of the Office of Emergency Services. And after review of these class descriptions, we found the preponderance of them included detailed physical requirements that would be prevalent in a safety classification at any level. And although that is a critical data point, my focus was not on necessarily ensuring that the fire chief class description aligned with these other departments, but rather that the district's class description supported the role of a safety classification under the California Government Code while remaining and also supporting inclusivity. So as discussed in the staff report, as well as what Director McLaughlin had spoken about, employees that are classified as safety positions include those that are involved in law enforcement, fire suppression, and protection of public safety, as well as classifications that are designated by law. So fire chief is not a classification that's designated by law to be a safety classification. And as the director also said, that these safety classifications received heightened benefits, and they received this because they are engaged in protecting the public and are exposed to greater physical risk during their employment. So ensuring class descriptions are properly classified is the responsibility of the district. And any inappropriate member classifications is actually actively investigated by CalPERS field auditors, and corrective actions are taken for such inappropriate classifications. And some of those corrective actions could include correction of service credit, retirement contributions, and adjusting retirement allowances. So based on this research, staff is recommending that the board approve the revisions to the fire chief class description as presented to comply with the California Government Code and to safeguard and protect the local safety status of the fire chief position. As mentioned before, I did try to include all comments and edits that were made. And as as Director McLaughlin spoke to regarding ADA, we did include the language for ADA, and basically what we're saying is that that the person that is going to fulfill the position will able to fulfill the essential duties with or without reasonable accommodation. So we're allowing employees to have a reasonable accommodation to fulfill the duties. So we're not intentionally excluding any protected class from this position, but otherwise just trying to ensure that the fire chief position is properly assigned as a safety classification and has duties that support a safety position. So thank you for listening, and I'm open for any questions now.
I just want to make one correction, Francine. I was not the one who asked about Palo Alto. I think that was Director Bernstein.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay, just to clear the record.
Sure.
I have a question.
Robert?
Yeah, actually, it's two questions. I'm looking at on page 40 of page 40, and it talked about it was job related, but now it's minimum qualifications. And then the third bullet point down, it starts off as principal of public and business administration, including finance. And you have redevelopment agency got crossed out, or oversight committee. From my understanding, what some of the duties that the chief does is he interface with various redevelopment agencies. Since they no longer exist as redevelopment agencies, they set up a different hybrid of groups of folks when it comes to development. So I'm not sure what that, I know it's not called redevelopment agencies, but it's a similar type work that they did. For example, they interfacing with Facebook and setting up parts of their fire suppression at the campus. I know Ryan was taking a lead on that, but the chief was pretty active in that. And I know that in East Palo Alto, the chief was working with this development group that was there in terms of understanding and assist them in their development around suppression. So there's some of that work that still is needed as long as development is. And I don't know what to call it at this point, since I assume they cross out redevelopment agencies because they don't exist anymore in our area at our level. So that's the first comment. I don't know if there's another word to be used or not. The second concern I have is that really kind of sticks in my craw as the term used, and it's in the same page on page 40, moving down to ability. Chief has to have the ability to. It's starting with the third bullet point, being able to operate fire suppression equipment. Is my understanding, Francine, is that the chief, even though he's the commander-in-chief of, within the operation, he still have to pull a hose and be able to climb a ladder and be able to operate that suppression equipment. And it seemed like they have an ability to do it. I mean, whether he had the ability before or, years ago when he was actually in the field versus now 16, 20 years later, we still want him to be, him or her, to be able to pull, operate the suppression equipment, be able to pull water hoses, and et cetera. I have a strong feeling about whether that should be the ability section, depending on my understanding of what a fire chief actually does. So, and the last question has to do with looking at on page 42, it talked about, and I'm hoping that, the statement is kind of a generic phrase, but it talked about where under, it mentioned about Menlo Park Fire Protection District, an equal opportunity employer. I know that's a standard comment that is used in any job descriptions, but my assumption is that, is there any other language beyond that point that has to be, that we need to put in there, or this sufficient to let the public know that we are? That's
Okay.
it.
So I'll work backwards because just that recency effect, it's easier for me to remember. So on the last comment regarding the EEO, I think that comment suffices to kind of show that we are an equal opportunity employer, and that we will, if needed, we can make reasonable accommodations to allow maybe someone with disabilities to perform the central functions of the position. Like you said, it's pretty kind of boilerplate standard language and language that I've seen in many other classifications and that we used at my prior agency, but we don't have them in our classifications here. So I think that's pretty inclusive. If there's another kind of way you would like to see it, I'm open to hearing about that, but I believe that's pretty inclusive, that language. The next comment that you had, I think it was page 41. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling. I
Yeah,
have a very
41.
small, and that was the.
Actually, it's page, no, it's page
Was it 41?
40, it's page 40.
40, okay, sorry, 40,
That's
page
okay.
40. So the ability to operate fire suppression equipment.
Right.
So, as you stated, Director Jones, it's not something that the chief will obviously have to do or will be part of standard, kind of customary duties. But as going through all of this CalPERS legislation, doing this research, kind of what they're saying is that a position at this level, obviously management position, needs to be able to fall back to performing a safety duty in the event of like some, emergency, natural disaster. If we eliminated any kind of safety role, then it wouldn't be a safety position. And so CalPERS mentioned that they had done some audits where positions promoted from kind of line, positions up into managerial positions. One of them was a position that was promoted into Director of Public Safety. And when the position promoted into Director of Public Safety, that classification didn't have any inclusion of any safety duties. And so therefore that position should not be a safety position. So what they're saying is that not always, just because someone starts safety and goes up through the, kind of promotes up through the chain where they stay in a safety classification, truly their duties have to pertain to a safety function. And it may be that it's just that one time, in the life of their career that they have to maybe go and do some sort of assistance, but we need to know that they have the ability to do it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be considered a safety position.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Thank
So-
you.
And then the other question you asked, don't remind me, I'll see, I think you said page, was it also page 40? I'm trying to look at yeah, it was page 40. So about the redevelopment agency. And
Right.
I believe I got feedback, and I don't want to misquote anyone, but I thought I got feedback from one of the directors saying that one should be stricken because we don't have that committee anymore. And so that's why I basically redacted that language. But if it's something that we do have, or I didn't include, and I also, sorry, I forgot to mention when I did go over this, that I have 2 job specs attached. I have one, which is the red line, where I tried to kind of do the major changes, but it got so messy because it was kind of hard to visually see and combine things that were actually like statements, because there was kind of a lot of repetitive statements included in this. And then I moved to kind of a cleaner like format that I created, where I didn't take anything material out, but just tried to move and condense. So if it's true that should have stayed in, then I'm happy to put that language back in, or something to that effect.
There aren't any redevelopment agencies, but there are. Each city is different, and because I know it's Menlo Park versus East Palo Alto, they have groups of folks, developers that in East Palo Alto, they get together monthly and talk about their development and how to move the process forward. And in doing so, I don't know if Chief Johnson is still on the line. Maybe you might want to add something to this effect. But there's the work along, and I don't know what the words to use. There are groups of people, developers that meet and talk about how to move a certain project, especially if there's several different developers engaged in a particular area to develop those projects along. And I think that the fire department has been very instrumental in us aiding these folks in information, and especially when it comes to how to put in the necessary things that the fire district is looking for.
Okay, you know what I wonder, Director Jones, is I wonder if that's kind of discussed in the new template, which is attachment B under it's page 2, item number 8, where it kind of talks about relationships like that with media, community partners, governmental agencies. And maybe I can add, something pertaining to redevelopment to discuss, services, mutual aid, fire protection, development, community service needs, or something. Yeah, I don't know if it's kind of if that's covered in there.
I'm looking at it again. I went through it, and I see that there are community services need, mutual aid kind of stuff. So that's kind of, it's. I think this will be sufficient enough. I don't know, Chief Johnson, you have anything to add to this, or if you're there?
The only item is, I think you always want things to be relevant, and yes, redevelopment agencies do not exist. So it's just, that's the only thing I would comment on.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Francine.
So, did I get all your questions, Director Jones?
Yes,
I think
you
you
did.
had 3.
That was it. You got all 3.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to just add a point here. I have some comments of my own separately, but the redevelopment agencies are gone. technically, those people who are charged with winding down all the business of redevelopment agencies are called technically in law now successor agencies. And so that's the technical name. But their job is really to sell properties, to get rid of the developments, and to just wind down all those operations. And I think what Robert was talking about was potentially part of that successor agency, but it's also just people who are involved in development in general within those communities. And that's a much broader kind of thing. I'm just trying to provide some technical expertise because I sit on the oversight board that regulates all those groups. Not those, but the successor agencies. There's only 13 of them in San Mateo County.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Could I mention then my own comments here?
Yeah, please do, Chuck.
For some reason, I don't see the page numbers Robert was referring to, but I now know it as to be page 40 through Robert, which is page 2 of this job description. Under the minimum qualifications, I mentioned this in comments I'd sent to the chief, but I did it very late today, and I apologize for that. The second bullet point down is a broken sentence. I'm not quarreling with it. It just doesn't read the way it should. So something is missing from there.
Yeah, so Director Bernstein, on that one, that one was on the attachment A. And so when I wrote it into B, I combined it with another sentence. And so it's because there was 2 statements very similar. So that sentence is not in attachment B, which is kind of the final one. It's the final draft, I guess.
I see. Okay, that's fine. That's fine then. My only comment here, it's funny how these things are done based on our experience. And I'm looking now at attachment B.
Okay.
And that is, and it was sort of a sore point for myself at least, and I think several other board members. There's nowhere does it mention that one of the chief's responsibilities is to provide timely notification to board members of events that represent some form of threat to the district, either a threat to its finances or a threat to its operational readiness or a threat to its reputation or something of that sort. And I just, having had an experience which I'd like to avoid in the future, I would just like to somewhere have mentioned that the responsibility to inform the entire board or the board president, or I'm not even sure of the right avenue for it, but there should be timely reporting of things that that represent a threat of some sort. And by timely, I mean, within a week or something of that sort.
Chuck, could I suggest under number 3 under key duties, perhaps just inserting, the timely requirement there. Would that satisfy?
Where are you, Jim?
On attachment B, the first page of attachment B, key duties.
Okay.
Number 3 under key duties.
That would be fine. I don't have a strong feeling for where it should be. I just this idea of, oh, we didn't realize how important this was just doesn't ring true for me, and I'd like to have information more quickly than that.
Okay.
Okay, I have that noted. Thank you.
That's all I had.
All right,
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions for Francine?
I have a few.
Virginia?
Yeah, actually, thank you so much, Francine, for your work on this. I think this is by and large an improvement from last month, but I do have some questions about the minimum qualifications, really. And it's not even so much the questions about, what is fire suppression equipment, but rather on page, I think it's on 40, I think it's 41. it's actually class description page 3, but I think based
What-
on
What page?
41,
Uh-huh,
it's
I'm
kind
there.
of, Chuck, the print, the number 41 is near the bottom left-hand corner next to the word training, a bachelor's degree, etc.
Oh my, I see now.
Yeah,
Okay.
do you see it? Yeah, it's hard to see. So it's oh God, I don't even know. Well, a couple of things. It's like the two bullet points above the crossed out word skill in, where you have perform assignments and maintain equipment in a safe manner, understand and carry out safety policies, rules, and regulations, and then properly use safety equipment. So what, I guess my question is, who determines if a person or our chief is doing all of these things to qualify to be a safety employee? Is it just, this just has to be in writing? Or does the board determine if the fire chief is properly using safety equipment?
Yeah, so for CalPERS purposes, or for the California Government Code definition of a safety classification, it basically is dependent upon the class spec and how to identify it with job responsibilities or duties that fall in the safety position assignment. So it's not necessarily the board having to check to make sure that the fire chief is doing safety duties, but knowing that if he's in that position, he's able to perform in a safety function and will, if needed, for an emergency or a natural disaster. So the properly used safety equipment is something that we typically have in our safety, class specs. Because if an employee doesn't, we don't want them to harm themselves or others. And if we needed to discipline based on that, we want it to be encompassed in their class spec that it is a requirement that they use, they use the safety equipment properly. So I think for this position at this level, it's just kind of saying that, because you are a safety position and we will need you to perform safety functions in the event of an emergency, or you also need to perform it safely. So that's kind of what it means, not something necessarily for the board to be auditing or verifying. Of course, if something happened, then the board would know if something wasn't done safely. But I'm not sure if that answers your question.
I mean, it kind of does, Francine, but you did mention disciplinary action. And so would the board determine whether or not the fire chief is able to properly use safety equipment for disciplinary action purposes?
That would
I mean,
that would only be if something like catastrophic happened.
we had that. What do you mean by I just don't want us to exclude possible talent in the future, like with what our chief had to go through and what this board and our constituents and residents had to go through in 2013. And, so, and I'm just trying to connect the dots here, right? We oversee the chief's performance, right? I have seen, I'm a little troubled by some of the newspaper articles that have been coming out about, I don't know, performance or whatever. And what I don't want is this to be used against a chief when the chief is using his or her professional judgment to do something. Number one. Number two, the chief doesn't go through training exercises, right? Like all the others, whether the rank and file people, they go through the training. That's part of their job. Right. And so again, who determines whether this safety equipment is properly used? that would be the board when it comes to the chief, right?
Mhm.
Because the chief reports to the board and the board does the performance review of the chief. So that's a concern that I have. Then the bullet underneath says maintain confidentiality and diplomacy regarding sensitive information. I understand the confidentiality piece, but I'm not sure how diplomacy is defined and who defines that. So if the chief has a problem with the conduct of or language of correspondence, I mean, and it's not viewed as diplomatic, is that a knock on the chief? Because I actually would expect a chief to kind of push back a little bit, because I do think that sometimes board members, not necessarily this board, but in general, city councils, board members, they kind of micromanage and believe they can do a better job than the professionals when they actually, in actuality, cannot. So, you know, what's determined to be diplomatic or maintaining confidentiality and diplomacy? That's a very, very subjective term. And again, I'm bothered by what has been written in the paper about correspondence between a few directors. So, I mean, I'm looking at this in light of all of the stuff I've been reading and I'm a little concerned about. So there's that. I also think I'm glad that y'all included more agencies in here, more special districts. I see that the only one special district that was included in San Mateo County was, actually, there were no districts. The Central County Fire is not a special district. So technically speaking, there was no special district or fire district in San Mateo County that was included in your group of 13. There were fire departments, and Central County Fire is not technically a special district. They don't have a governing elected board like we do. So I would have liked to have seen comparisons of special districts or fire districts within this county. It would be interesting to see what North County Fire Authority does, since they have 3 cities under their jurisdiction, and they've actually consolidated their administration and management functions, I think, under one manager, which is the fire chief for North County Fire Authority. So I'm a little surprised that that one wasn't looked at. And I'd like to know, I mean, for me, I just think that there needs to be a little more research that needs to be done. I'd like to understand your research methodology. How did you pick these 13? I mean, when we look at comparisons for our contract negotiations, you know, how we want to compare salaries or compensation, you know, we put together as a board things that we want to look at. So what were the qualifications that made the HR committee decide that these were the 13, and does not include a fire district in this county? I would love to have seen the survey questions. How many survey questions were there? What kind of questions were they? And that kind of thing. And I would have loved to have seen well, I think that you have some of the relevant PERS, well, I don't even know some of the relevant PERS information in here, but I just don't think it's detailed enough in terms of the rules, I guess, what it is that we're looking for. So, I mean, those are my concerns in light of what we've been dealing with and what I've seen in the papers regarding PRA requests, and just the emails between some directors and retired Chief Chapel-Homan right now. I'm also concerned with the possibility where we've had 2 situations that I know of in this fire district where board members have gone to an incident. And I think one of the incidents years ago resulted in our board policy section 5.9 under board members' conduct and responsibilities. that actually says of observing fire personnel while they are engaged in emergency or disaster operations. A director shall not distract or engage personnel in any way. Directors shall position themselves so as to not interfere with emergency operations or become a distraction to command or staff. You know, so I know in 2019, there was the Facebook sarin incident situation where one of the directors went there, and it's just, you know, what I'm glad that Chief Chappelham, and I'm sure other chiefs, are strong enough to say, hey, this is our job and we're trained to do this. At least the chiefs that were there, and I know that when I was the board president in 2019, Chief Chappelhoman was on the phone with reporters literally from all over the world. And he was doing what I think that he should have been doing as the chief. So when a director is there and, you know, makes a judgment that maybe the chief, when he was on the phone doing his job as a chief, was not at the site and therefore was not, you know, I don't know, performing assignments and maintaining equipment in a safe manner or whatever was expected or not expected. You know, that concerns me. These are judgment calls. These are things that we actually base our performance review on. And I know that performance reviews are very subjective, but at the same time, I think that we need to be mindful of exactly what does a chief do in his role. Because for me, the chief is not trained necessarily, or continuing the training to properly use safety equipment or to operate fire suppression equipment. But what the chief could be trained for is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I don't see any of that in here. But Redwood City Fire, and I'll say it again, I said it last month, Redwood City Fire was one of your comparable organizations, continues to be. So EEOC does not cut it for me. So I'm just saying that that kind of training, that's what I would like to see. That's what I think a chief should be trained in, among other things. But that's, to me, the language was not in here. Maybe I missed it. I mean, it's possible. And is this red line version, is this the one that was given out to candidates or applicants for our current job specs? Or the red line
Virginia?
version?
Virginia,
Yes.
you've had the floor for almost 15 minutes and I'd like
Not
to
15 minutes, Jim, but I had a lot to say, and that's my right as an elected board member to say that the things that I'm entitled to say.
It is, but our rules say that after 5 minutes, it's supposed to rotate. So I would ask if,
Oh, okay. I didn't realize I was taking that long.
yeah, if there's something you want to say to wrap it up, but I'd like to rotate it.
Oh, no, I just asked these questions. Sorry. So I'd like to have them answered at some point.
Okay. Rob, I see your hand.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. I just have two questions for Chief Schaefer. When a firefighter or an employee of the fire district is issued a piece of equipment for operations, are they trained on it? And two, is there like a yearly certification or quarterly, or like if they're issued the breathing apparatus, are they certified once a year or semi-annually? Or so what I'm trying to get at is any piece of equipment that the fire district issues an employee, they're required to be proficient with it. And is there some type of a certification time?
Director, how do I put this? So every piece of equipment that the firefighters have, they've had lots of training on that piece of equipment. And as they move up in rank, that training probably is far and few between the higher they go. However, you know, based on based on your question, when someone's been, wearing an air pack for 3 decades, they probably could train on it more, but I think that if someone needed to put on that air pack, they could do that, even though they hadn't done it in a while. But typically it's not their typical function, but if they had to, they could, and they'd have the muscle memory to do it.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Jim.
All right, thank you. Anyone else before we return to Virginia? All right, Virginia, I don't know if you had additional comments or questions.
Sorry, Jim. Sorry, I didn't realize that I'd run out of time, but I would love it if Francine could. Well, I think I don't know. I think, were there questions for you to answer, Francine?
Good question. I was trying to take notes as you were speaking. So what I heard is you had some concern regarding the research. And I want to assure you that we did our due diligence with research. We used the departments that the district had used in the past. And we did reach out to special districts, and some special districts we didn't hear back from. So we included the ones we did. We were kind of on a timeline. And when we were doing the research for the class specifications, we were doing so just to kind of get, again, and I think I stated it in my opening comment, not to mirror our class spec with these others, but just kind of to get like a base, kind of a base. And I understand we're in San Mateo County. I'm not sure San Mateo County is widely different than Santa Clara County or some of the other counties in, California. But I'm happy to pull, more research if the board feels that that the research wasn't complete. I also did focus on CalPERS and did a lot of research regarding that, because I think that is the key point in this job specification in determining if this is a safety classification or not. And if it kind of comes down to the board not wanting to include some of this language, then we need to reclassify it. And we need to let CalPERS know, as well as the incumbents that are applying for this position, know that it isn't a safety classification. I think that would hinder the interest that we get in the position. But if that's the direction the board would want to take, we could do that. But we would just need to advise CalPERS as well as applicants that are in the process. Yeah, so those are I'm sorry. Those were the two kind of key points I wrote down regarding the more research in the special districts. I'm not sure.
Thanks so much, Francine. You did a great job distilling it, but I do have a question, and maybe it's something for the committee, or maybe mainly for you, Francine. How many fire districts and fire departments do not have the kind of language that the HR committee is proposing and recommending, and have similar language to ours? And I don't know. I don't know, because I don't know what your universe was except these 13.
Yeah, so that's, that's kind of what we looked at, is those 13, and out of the 13, it was over 2/3. So I wanted to say
that do not have that language.
No, that did have very specific language that included that they would, need to walk, be involved in an active kind of firefighting, role, because, like I said, they're not just managerial positions, they're safety positions. And if we took out every reference to any sort of safety equipment, and CalPERS came and did an audit on us, they would say not a safety position. So that's just the decision that the board would need to make, is if we don't want to include it in our job spec, because it is the responsibility of the district to ensure our job specs are properly classified. And so if we didn't want to include it, we would just need to reclassify it as a non-safety managerial, executive leader position.
Right, I understand. So,
yes.
Virginia, do you want to yield to Robert?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I just had one more quick question, but yeah, I'll yield to Robert
Go ahead,
right now.
finish up. I don't, finish the thought.
Okay, yeah, before I forget. So the North County Fire Authority would be an interesting position to look at their chief. I would have liked to have seen that comparison, because
Okay.
the chief there really is administrative, right?
Uh-huh.
Even though he was probably classified as a safety employee at some time. I don't know if that's the classification now.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that would have been a great comparison, I think, for us to see.
okay. I can pull that.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Uh-huh.
Robert?
Francine, so
Yes.
the description that you rewrite, what you put together, would you say that this would cut the mustard with whoever we need to cut the mustard with as being a safety position? Or would it
Yes.
fall in that category? So as it is right now, I guess the dilemma that I have, and maybe that's Virginia have, are there, and I'm not saying that we will as an institution, but what if there was someone to come in as a chief and, maybe they lost a hearing, for example, but they fit all these other classifications. It seems as if there was flexibility in past boards that allow our previous chief to remain in a certain position based upon his capacity to continue to run the operation. Do you feel as though that what we have before us now, meeting the initial qualification, that there is flexibility in there to, if a new chief come in or something happened, that there's flexibility in there to, if we can accommodate them within the parameters of what is needed by them as an equal opportunity employer, to still run an organization and run it effectively, but maybe missing 100% of its hearing.
Yes. So in response to your question, yes, there is flexibility within this job spec to for the board to assess any reasonable accommodations for essential duties. And the purpose of including some safety function in this class spec is to align with the safety position that it's classified with CalPERS, but not to exclude anyone. So there still is that flexibility, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Chuck?
I wanted to ask Francine a question, and I think she's answered it, but I just want to make sure I've understood. Do I understand correctly that attachment B will now supersede attachment A, and attachment A will no longer exist?
That's correct. I started with trying to make all material changes in attachment A, and then I wanted to kind of clean it up. But then it was really hard to clean it up because it looked so messy, and I was hard to combine statements. So then when I went into the new format, I moved things around and maybe combined, sentences or statements, but didn't make any material changes. So the attachment A was to kind of show you the bulk of the changes, but attachment B was to show you this is kind of what it might look like is if we did a template too, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure that, because you never want to have two documents that are similar, because then there could be a disagreement between the two of them. So I just wanted to be sure. And I have one other comment relating to your comments about safety. And at some point, we're going to have to look at fire prevention through this lens, because some, perhaps not all, but some of the fire prevention folks I know are safety employees, and I'm not sure you could find any safety component to their job along the nature of what we've been saying about the chief. So I think it's important for us to be consistent here.
Yeah, and as you said that, Director Bernstein, I've actually referred this exact question to CalPERS, because through all my research, I can't find anything specific to carve out for prevention staff. And I want to be very clear, that there is that linkage, that nexus. Unfortunately, they're having a hard time answering my question too, because I just got an email this morning that they're referring me again to another specialist. But I am continuing my research I want to ensure that all of our classifications are properly assigned to safety.
At this point, I just want to draw attention to, attachment B is the job description that we're being asked to approve this evening. I've made note of one specific change that Chuck Bernstein brought up about adding a timeliness requirement to notifications to the board under, key duties number 3. I just want to make sure that we've captured all of those so that when there's a motion to approve this document, that those types of revisions are specifically noted. I have that one.
I have that one.
So I'm thinking about you, Francine, on, when you return and have to deal with this. So are there other specific revisions to attachment B before us that need to be considered?
So Jim, I think it sounds like my concerns are not going to be addressed. And, like I said, I think we're on the right track, and I think this is a big improvement. But in terms of the research, so that we're, I think rock solid on it, I think one more iteration with at least a look-see at the North County Fire Authority structure might be good. That would be my suggestion. I mean, I'm not against something like this, but I just think it needs just a little more work. But that's just me.
Okay. Are there any, again, to my issue, are there other specific revisions that need to be noted for Francine's benefit on this document that's before us now?
Jim?
Rob?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adapt the revised job description that Francine had prepared with the additional comments relative to, I believe, that Chuck added to it. Francine, please correct me here if but that's my motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Well, I'll second the motion to move it along, but I think if there was something that would help Virginia feel comfortable and bring it back, that wouldn't be terrible, but I'll second the motion because I feel like it's in pretty good shape right now.
Jim,
Yes,
the
Robert.
comment period on that motion, or
Yes,
you
please
want to
do.
vote?
No, please do.
I'm all for what Francine has put together. I think she's done a good job, but I feel uncomfortable leaving what Virginia had talked about kind of in the lurch right at this point in time, because we'll approve something, it's done deal, it's done, we're over with it at this point. It's going to have to come back. What I would feel comfortable if Virginia would kind of, there's 4 different sections here, and it seemed like that she was focusing on the training aspect. If there was something specific that she wanted to see that Francine can kind of focus on, rather than trying to deal with the whole job description aspect from Redwood City. If it's around training, what's specific about training, and just to give her something to work with. That would, I think, in terms of being able to kind of, and maybe that's not what Virginia is looking for, but I think that's what I thought I heard, and it would be a little bit more specific to giving Francine something specific to go and research if that was the case, to kind of make that what Chuck talked about, Virginia's concern, to get addressed to some extent.
We have this document before us, and if it were to be adopted, then
That's a done
it's
deal.
subject to revision at any time. And if
Well, not really, Jim.
I wasn't quite finished with my thought. It's subject to revision at any time, just as any of the policy documents are. And if Virginia or any other director felt that it was deficient in some regard, they're free to raise that issue, and it could be referred back to the HR committee for, if that was the will of the board, for further consideration for revision. So those are my thoughts. Virginia?
Jim, yes, so I appreciate that. I mean, really, it would only be up for reconsideration once adopted at the will of the HR committee and the will of this board. So maybe, as Robert is suggesting, I should probably give some more specific things for Francine to look at. I think I thought I was pretty specific in terms of the, like in terms of training, DEI kind of training. Do we want something in there? Do we want, like I said, I'd like to see, at least a comparison between, or a comparison with what North County Fire Authority is doing, just given their structure. It's really, there's an administrative piece to it that may or may not be relevant to us. So, I'm not saying that we shouldn't move forward with something like this. I just think that there could be just a little more improvement. This can come back in August after Francine looks at these things.
Again, this document is before us.
Right, and there's a
so,
motion.
Yeah, there's a motion and a second. So, once vote is taken, if you felt you wanted to pursue a revision, if it were approved, then you could pursue that path.
Well, I could pursue it, but nothing may happen. And that's why I'm a little, that's why I'm a little reluctant to support it right now. But I think if it's baked a little more, it might be a really good document.
All right. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question, Director McLaughlin.
Yes, sir.
The motion, as I heard it, was from Director Solano, was to approve the document in attachment B with Director Bernstein's additional comments. And perhaps I'm the only one, but I'm not sure I know exactly what those comments are. And so there's some clarity that everybody's voting on the same thing. Maybe it'd be helpful to specify what those additional comments are.
All right, very good. Chuck, perhaps you could, specifically address what you wanted to see added, and then Rob, if you could perhaps refine your motion to reflect that.
Were you addressing me, Jim?
Pardon me?
Were you addressing me? Did you want me to?
Yes. If, my recollection is that you wanted to see a timeliness requirement for notification to the board. And I suggested that perhaps key duties number 3 would be the appropriate place to include that modification.
Well, I'm happy to give some wording that I provided the chief earlier today, but basically what I said is that I'd like a notation, and it would have to fit grammatically, whether it was a new sentence or it was a continuation of the existing sentence, but it basically either provide or providing timely reporting to board members of critical information that could affect the finances, operational readiness, or reputation of the district. So
could that fit within that item 3? If 3 were revised to reflect that timeliness requirement?
Yes,
Critical issues.
It could be an extended sentence, or it could be a second sentence under point 3, or
Okay.
it could have a, what do you call it, a semicolon and and continue on. I mean, there's a number of ways to write that. I was not trying to author something from the dais here, but
Sure. And rather than try to author it here, if and I'd ask Stephen, is it sufficient to, for the motion to reflect Director Bernstein's comments that there be a timeliness requirement for critical issues? And then leave the penmanship, the wordsmithing to Francine?
Sure. I mean, if the board is comfortable voting on that, I think that's helpful clarification that his comments are regarding the timeliness in item number 3 of attachment B. So my comment was not a prescriptive one, but just to make sure that you all understood what you were voting on.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So Jim,
Robert?
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with that because I'm trying to separate the difference between what Chuck is saying, which is very articulate in what he was saying, and if Francine is going to put together the language for that, and whatever she put together, it's going to have to be okay with everyone. I don't see the difference between what Virginia is asking for about the training in that respect. So that's the dilemma I'm in at this point with that process.
Perhaps I could suggest this, Chuck, if you could, again, restate the specific language that you had. Michelle, if you could record that. And then when Rob makes reference to it in his motion, we'll all have that same common understanding of the specific language that Chuck is proposing.
I'll just say that I do have it written as timely reporting to the board of critical information that could affect the finances, operational readiness, or reputation of the district.
Michelle, that's for key duties under number 3.
So that would be as it's listed under attachment B under key duties in number 3.
Okay. All right.
Jim,
Thank you.
Virginia?
are we authoring from the dais now, or are we just looking at the motion with only Chuck's suggestions?
You're free to make any, I open the floor before to any requests for revision, Virginia. If you have any, please make them.
I mean, I really don't want to author things from the dais right now without thinking things through. But the motion was specifically for Chuck's language, not anyone else's. And that's the document that you want to look at, which excludes everyone else's suggestions. So what is it? Do you want us to author and rewrite this right now in a meeting? Or do you want to stick with what Rob's motion was, which is what you wanted us to do when I brought up, my questions, so which one is it? Sticking to the document that's been moved with Chuck's edits only?
Or is there a or to that?
Or
Do you have
opening
language,
it up?
Virginia?
Because I mean, right now you're saying we're sticking to the motion with Chuck's language, the motion, which does not include anyone else's language. And then you're saying we're opening it up. So which means that we should be authoring from the dais at
I'd
this.
be happy to address that. Happy to address that. Chuck presented that specific comment that he just repeated and that Michelle has recorded prior to this meeting. He submitted it to Chief Schaefer and Michelle prior to the meeting. So it really isn't being authored from the dais. It was prepared in advance of the meeting.
Well, I didn't see it.
Pardon me. We're moving backwards. Several minutes ago, I invited anyone else to make specific revisions, add specific language to attachment B. No one spoke. So if you have something now, some specific language that you would like to be included in the document that's before us, and then we'll all be free to vote for it or not vote for it.
Well, then I think the motion needs to be withdrawn because that is not the motion.
I've asked Rob to revise his motion to reflect Chuck's specific language.
That's correct. So it's only Chuck's specific language. That was
You are
the motion.
free. No, you and every other director is
Michelle, would
free.
you please repeat the motion?
Sure. The motion is to adopt the revised job description, adding in language for timely reporting to the board of critical information that could affect the finances, operational readiness, or reputation of the district.
Correct. That's the motion.
Specifically in
And I concur with that motion.
item
Thank you.
3.
Thank
That's
you,
my
Michelle.
point. That's the motion. And that's language that was from Chuck, which is fine. But maybe you saw it. I didn't see any of that. So that's why I'm just uncomfortable with all of this. I don't know. Did he send it to the board?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
No,
recall.
he sent it, as I said before, he sent to Mike Schaefer and Michelle.
Right. So I would not have had the opportunity to
Right.
look at this.
Right.
So I can't be accused of not looking at it because I never had the opportunity to look at it. So
Mhm.
that is the motion and it's very specific, which are we going to make another motion to work on the rest of the document? Because I would like to take out the word diplomacy. I mean, there are things that I would want to do too.
Jim?
So, but the motion is not that.
Jim,
Rob,
I'd like to continue with our motion in a second, please.
are you calling for the vote, Rob?
Yes, I am.
All right. So again, please help me out here, Stephen. Does that require a majority to approve calling for the vote?
If there are directors who want to continue the discussion, the response to Director Solano's calling for the question would require first a vote on whether to stop discussion before you actually vote on the item itself. But if there is generally consensus that his call for the question means time to vote, you don't need to do that. So it's really a question of whether there's an objection to his motion.
Virginia, are you interested in pursuing this matter further? Before
I think the
vote?
motion is very specific. I mean, I think that there was an opportunity for Director Solano to withdraw it so that we can add more edits if that's what we're being asked to do. Because right now, the motion is only going to allow one director to give input into this document. And that's the problem I'm having, especially when the chief reports to all 5 of us. So I think the motion is, quite frankly, pretty selfish and self-serving.
Are we ready to call for the vote, or is there further discussion? Robert, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm just trying to move the process along here. I think that there's been a call for the call to vote, and the vote whether to, I assume that to move forward with the motion that's already on the table. And then Virginia can have a second opportunity to bring another motion. But I think I thought I heard from her, she want to include something around the experience and training into this particular motion. So it appears to me that if there's some critical language that Virginia want to add, or that it seemed to me the maker of the motion is open to hearing that and possibility of including that into this particular language. I'm not sure. That's what I think I heard.
Well, I'm not the maker of the motion.
I know Rob is, but you gotta, as Jim has said, trying to bring closure on
Right.
if there's language that you want to put in there around training, what I thought I heard, that state what it is, and the maker of the motion, which is Rob, can say yes, yes, that's acceptable or not. If not, we're going to call for the vote to move it forward or not, or move the conversation forward or not.
I think this all falls under the continued discussion. So as I understand it, Rob is called for the vote, so we would have to have a majority vote to say we're ending discussion and taking the vote. Is that correct, Stephen?
Yes, my idea was, I think, perhaps not the best one, that there was the consensus on this issue. So I do think that you probably need a vote on the motion to call the question.
Okay. Is there a motion to end debate and move to a vote?
I think
Rob
that
made
has been
motion.
made by Director Solano. So
And we would need a second.
you can just vote on that.
All right, is there a second to Rob's call for the vote?
I'll second it.
All right. Michelle, would you call the roll? The motion is to end discussion on this and move to a vote on the item before us, attachment B.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
No,
Director Crawley,
No,
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. So that takes us to the vote for the revisions to the chief's job description, item B in the package. Michelle, would you call the vote, please?
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
no,
Director Crawley,
no,
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye.
so when would I have an opportunity to revise this, Jim?
If
Now
you
that
could
it's
make-
been adopted?
You could make a motion now, Virginia, to move it to or further consideration for revision to
The HR committee?
right? And if you have a majority that supports that, then the HR committee will take it up.
Great. I would like to make a motion to have the HR committee consider additional language with regard to DEI training, looking at, I mean, that's just one thing, looking at the North County Fire Authority structure to see how that might fit in with what we're trying to accomplish here from a management structure. If there is any similarity, and to look at possibly editing some of the language here right now that talks about maintain confidentiality and diplomacy regarding sensitive information, properly use safety equipment, and we can maybe even give more suggestions. So that's my motion, and therefore would reflect truly the five of us rather than one person, additional person.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Michelle, do you have the motion?
I kind of do. I have Virginia would like to refer this to the HR committee. I didn't get all the things that she wanted to them discuss
For further edits
for further edits.
and consideration for research considerations.
Okay,
I mean, that just encapsulates everything.
thank you.
If there's no further discussion, we'll take the vote.
I have a bit of discussion, and that is, Virginia, I think it's incumbent upon you to provide written comments to that committee regarding the changes you'd like to have considered.
I agree. And I've started taking notes on all of that.
If there's nothing further, we'll take the vote. Michelle?
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
aye,
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye.
Thank you. I'll send, Jim, should I send these comments to you and Mike, you're being the chair, or would you and Rob like that as these comments as the HR committee?
No, you can send them to me as the HR committee.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Jim, I have a question.
Rob?
Yeah, I have the Francine's draft here. What areas specifically, Virginia, are you addressing here?
Rob, she's gonna prepare notes.
Yeah,
Sure.
Rob, I've started preparing notes. It'll be easier for you to read them.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the next item, number 8, discuss developing a process for budgeting future pension liability under the CalPERS replacement benefit plan. Francine has prepared really an excellent digest of this issue, and I'm going to let her present it to the board.
Okay, thank you, Director McLaughlin. I kind of put that into a PowerPoint, so if it's okay, I'll share my screen and
Please
kind of
do.
go through that. So let me start it and see if you can see. Can you see my screen?
sort of.
Yeah,
Can you? Okay.
I can.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going
Yes.
to talk just briefly about the CalPERS replacement benefit plan. So what the CalPERS replacement benefit plan is, it's an excess benefit arrangement that is qualified under the Internal Revenue Code 415. And what this allows, it allows for any portion of a retirement allowance that exceeds the cap to be paid for by the contributing agencies, the agencies where the employee worked. CalPERS does the calculation on this benefit, and some of the factors that they consider are the age the employee retires, any options that they select at retirement, the age of their beneficiary, and if they purchase any service credit. There are two compensation limits that are to be considered under the replacement benefit plan. One is the compensation limit under the IRC Internal Revenue Code 401. And this is the maximum amount of income that is subject to CalPERS deductions for both employer and employee. And there are three tiers. So we have classic members, and for 2021, the maximum amount of PERSable income for classic members is $290,000. For a PEPRA member, that 2021 amount is $153,671. And if you are a PERS employee that had a membership date prior to July 1 of 1996, you do not have a cap. So your compensation limit, you don't have a limit. And then there's pension limits under the Internal Revenue Code 415. And this is the maximum retirement benefit that can be paid from a qualified pension plan. And this is also done annually. And the current 2021 limit is $230,000. So any qualified amount that exceeds the annuitant's individual limit up to their CalPERS compensation cap could fall under the replacement benefit plan fund for any eligible employees. And for eligibility, it would be a CalPERS retiree who became a member prior to January 1, 2013. A payee or beneficiary or survivor of the same member who has a personalized IRC 415 limit that is eligible to participate in the replacement benefit plan. And PEPRA employees are not eligible for this benefit. So this is only for our classic members. So this is a liability for the district, but fortunately not an ongoing one where we're going to be adding members to this category only for our classic members, so not PEPRA. So the next slide is administration. So CalPERS handles all the administration of this benefit. So they bill the respective employers annually. They deduct all FICA taxes from the retirees, our replacement benefit plan check. They invoice the employers for the taxes if applicable. And they remit the employer-employee taxes to the IRS as well as issue W-2s. Retirees are paid quarterly, but they will not receive a check until all employers that they worked for made payments to CalPERS. And there is an administration fee that's charged, and the employees or retirees, sorry, are subject to paying it. But currently for 2021, the administrative fee is 0%. So there's no cost to the district for administration of this benefit. It's only the benefit itself. So the next slide is the payment calculation. So on the compensation limit slide, I mentioned the maximum amount, but employees could basically only qualify for less than the maximum amount if they fall into different categories. So if they retire before the age of 62, if you're not a police or fire with 15 years of service, it could be reduced. If you have under 10 years of service, that benefit cap can be reduced. And CalPERS bills multiple agencies. The amount that they would bill each agency that the employee or retired annuitant worked for would be based on the amount and length of service with each employer. And all prior employers' service would be included in this calculation. So the next slide is the budget. So this is as I was stating, these invoices from CalPERS are done yearly. So ultimately, we would receive one invoice each year. However, for different contracts that offer or afford a cost of living adjustment, we could be getting another invoice. So we could be getting two. If the supplemental COLA invoice adjusts the employee's amount for their replacement benefit plan, then we could get two invoices for an employee. As the limit for someone subject to the IRC 415 cannot be determined until retirement, it can make budgeting very difficult. Not so much for when we have employees that work their whole career with the district, but if we have someone leave, go to another district, and then maybe make even more than they were making at our district, then we could be, they could push them into that tier. So what CalPERS suggests is that we use our current invoices as a budget guide for each budget year. And this benefit, unfortunately, cannot be pre-funded through a Section 115 trust. So it makes it difficult to pre-fund this benefit as well as budget for it. The classifications that would be subject to this, we have 4 classifications at the district. Because we are smaller, we don't have as great of a liability. So the 4 classifications that exceed this amount for the max of their range is the fire chief, the deputy fire chief, division chief, as well as battalion chief. And out of these classifications, we have 12 budgeted FTE. And lastly, before I go to the recommendation, so currently, right now, the district only has 1 employee that we've been invoiced for that is subject to the replacement benefit plan fund. We actually have 2 annuitants now that would be subject. So our numbers are pretty small. However, we do need to come up with a plan to properly allocate and budget for these expenses. So I'm asking that the board direct the finance committee to develop a process for budgeting future pension liability under this replacement benefit plan, as well as explore avenues for investing allocated funds and report back to the board of directors. Any questions?
Oh,
Yes, Director Solano?
Robert? I think I saw Robert's hand first.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Which
Rob.
Robert?
Yeah, Robert
Go ahead,
Johnson,
Rob.
Mr. Johnson.
Go ahead, Rob.
I just, Francine is always great report. I'd like to go forward with her recommendation to move this to the finance committee to review and to set up a separate fund for this.
Thank you.
Are you making a motion, Rob?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Is there a second?
Well, I second it.
Okay. Chuck has seconded the motion. So discussion, Robert?
Yes, Francine,
Yes.
2 questions, and unfortunately, I don't have our budget in front of us. But it's you just mentioned that the district cannot pre-fund these positions. I assume there's some IRS, tax sheltering kind of thing that's probably prevents us from doing it. But so as a district, are we just waiting for the invoice and then coming up with the money at that point in time, or how are we kind of getting a hedge on some of that? I know it's not a lot, but over time it may start to be a lot. But how are we? Are we doing it now? Or are we just waiting?
Yeah, I don't believe the district is budgeting for this. I could be wrong. I'm not sure of if so how they are budgeting for it. Because like you said, it's kind of hard to keep track of, because even if you identify the classifications as well as the incumbents, there's so many other factors that can change what that replacement benefit invoice might look like. And one of the biggest ones is the option that they select at retirement. If they took an unmodified allowance, then we probably could budget based on unmodified. But if they do modified, then we may be over budgeting by maybe 2-3 fold. So that's why it was brought up that we recommend that the Finance Committee discuss options for how to allocate funds and budget for this. And through my CalPERS research, it looks like there's over 1,000 CalPERS statewide employees that fall into this category. And out of those 1,000 employees, it's about 500 agencies. So we're not the only ones. Unfortunately, we are probably one of the smaller agencies with the least amount of impact, but we still have impact.
Okay, the last question. So if I understand it, so the what they call RBP, the replacement benefit plan,
Yeah.
so each employer that the individual go or work for, they have to pay into it to some extent. And annually, there's CalPERS sent out an invoice to everybody. And it only get paid until all the other employers put their share or put their money into it.
That's correct.
Is there a deadline that is actually given to all the employers to make this happen?
Yeah, so when they invoice us, they say when the payment is due. But like you said, if there was one employee or one annuitant that worked for 4 employers and CalPERS collected funds from 3, they wouldn't generate this check until that 4th employer paid. So it is critical to pay timely. I don't know that if CalPERS charges any fees for, through all my research, I wasn't able to find anything like that for any late fees. But basically it's kind of the employee that or the annuitant that we will be hurting by kind of holding those funds. So yeah, timeliness is definitely important, and there are due dates on the invoices that we receive.
And you said we only got 1 now, but the anticipation is probably 3 or 4 or more as the years go.
So currently, since I've started with the district, since I started in January, we've received one invoice with 1 annuitant on it. But since I've started, we've had 1 more person retire that falls into this category. So now we will have 2 that would be impacted by this replacement benefit plan fund.
And one last sneaky question. So if the actual employee passes, does the survivor takes on this after they pass?
So that's correct. If the annuitant selected a unmodified or a modified withholding to leave some to that survivor. So if the annuitant retired and took an unmodified allowance and didn't leave anything, then there wouldn't. But if they took an option like option 2 or one of the options where it leaves some money to that survivor, and that amount of money exceeds this Internal Revenue Code limit, then that survivor would be afforded the same benefit that the deceased annuitant received.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Very helpful.
Scott?
Just to follow on Robert's question, if, for example, the survivor gets 50% of the annuitant's compensation, that would fall below the limit. But is the limit then prorated downward also, or?
No.
Oh, so if somebody was at 400,000 and they drop down to 200,000, then there's no excess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So the Internal Revenue Code basically says that you can only pay so much out of a qualified defined pension plan. And so that's what that limit is set for. So if someone taking the 50% is below it, then there's no excess to pay. You're correct, Director.
Okay, so it'd be very unlikely that it would benefit a survivor.
Very unlikely, unless, I mean, there are options, right, with CalPERS where you could leave your survivor with 100%. So if annuitant selected that 100%, then their survivor would be afforded that same benefit.
Now, as I understand, a second question,
Yes.
In the classic plan, the classic employees pay a percentage of their income toward the retirement plan. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
But since CalPERS does not collect for this excess salary, they're also not collecting the 3% from the employee for that excess salary. Is there a provision made whereby the employee has to pay that 3% or whatever it is?
So the employee pays, and the employer, both the employer and the employee pay up to the CalPERS compensation limit. And so whatever is paid up to that CalPERS compensation limit, if something exceeds the retirement limit, then through our actuary, that's kind of calculated in, but they still pay up to the CalPERS compensation limit.
I understand that, but we're talking about benefits that are over that we owe, the annuitant.
Right.
And it sounds like rather than there's a cost sharing between the district and the employee, it sounds like the district pays 100% of that overage.
No, the employee pays.
Employee pays also?
Yes, the employee pays. So
Oh.
they pay, yeah, the employee pays their 8%, which is the employee contribution on their CalPERS earnings up to the CalPERS compensation limit, even if that limit exceeds the IRC 415 for retirement benefit limit, the employee pays. So the employee, yeah.
I thought it said somewhere that CalPERS did not collect either from the district or from the employee for those.
Yeah, so that was on the first slide where it said the compensation limit, and that was on the CalPERS side. So CalPERS will not collect anything above the CalPERS compensation limit. So once you reach that limit, if you're classic, if you're PEPRA, if you were hired before the 1996 date, there is no limit. But once you reach that limit, the contributions would stop.
So what I'm saying, at that point, the district is on the hook for the full amount of the excess. The employee is not paying any portion of it.
So let me go back to that slide.
Could I ask, I think this is the kind of discussion, robust discussion that should be happening in the committee. And
Yeah, and I agree.
Chuck, you raise an excellent aspect of this that I had never considered.
But could I just ask one last general question? I'm
Sure.
sorry to get into the weeds here. You're right. I was already starting to think about this, but let me just ask the general question. Since we're talking about management employees here, could the district make a policy that that did not have any pension benefits beyond the statutory limits provided by the IRS?
So when you say make a policy for pension benefits, we're subject to our CalPERS contract, and this is the slide I brought back to, and I know you didn't want to get too far into it, so I'm not sure if you want me to talk about it or not.
I don't.
Go ahead if you can answer.
Okay, yeah. So what I was trying to kind of show with this slide, Director Bernstein, is that the pension limit is going to be lower than, so a PEPRA employee, let's start with the left side, the compensation limit. A PEPRA employee, their maximum contributions for CalPERS is $153,671. So they would never reach the 415 limit of 230, right? Because their limit is below that. They would not, the maximum amount that would be charged to CalPERS is going to be that 153,671 limit. A classic member or someone with a membership date prior to July 1, 1996, depending upon how much they earn, could exceed that pension limit on the right side. But the employee on the left side, the one on the second bullet, the classic employee, will be paying CalPERS deductions up to that limit, up to the 290, which is greater than the 230. So there wouldn't be a non-payment on the employee contributions. They're paying employee contributions on everything that is PERSable up to 290, which is the max, because they wouldn't be entitled to anything more. If a classic employee, maybe I'll give you an example, a classic employee, not one that was hired prior to July 1, 1996, but maybe someone that was hired in 2000, retired and made $350,000 annually. Their retirement would only be based on the 290 or whatever it would be at the year that they're retiring. So anything above that, they're not paying CalPERS on, but it would also not be subject to pension, a retirement benefit from a qualified pension plan. Does that make sense?
Well, let me ask more when we get into the committee meeting and so forth.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's good, Chuck.
I guess I want to know, could we adjust our pension limits? Do we have the ability to adjust our pension limits such that this no longer becomes an issue?
I mean, I do
Right,
think that's something we could talk about at the committee level. I would like to have more of a discussion. And Jim, with all due respect, we've gone beyond 5 minutes for one director as well.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that. We have a motion and a second. So if there's no further discussion, let's take the vote. And again, just as a reminder, this is to refer this issue to the Finance Committee to develop recommendations to the board. All right, Michelle, would you call the vote, please?
Yes, I just want to make sure we don't have any public comments. And if anybody does have any, please raise your hand now or hit *9. Seeing none. Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Prawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right, again, thank you for your excellent work on that, Francine. It was really a very thorough digest. Item 9, approve a request for proposal for Excella permit software technical support and enhancements. Chief Schaefer, I'll leave that to you. Is that something for Chief Johnson to address?
That is, Director. Chief Johnson will be taking this one.
Well, before you is basically authorization for a request for proposal. It's not approving a winning bidder. We're actually wanting to go out to bidders. And so this, we believe we are following a new purchasing policy due to possible dollar amounts. And so this went to the Finance Committee. A lot of questions were asked, and then it was recommended just from the Finance Committee to authorize the chief to issue this out so that we can receive bids. And I can answer any questions if there are any, but I'd like to leave it as simple as that.
Virginia?
Jim, I'm happy to make a motion if there are no questions.
I have a question.
Okay, I'll wait on my motion.
So is it my understanding, Chief Johnson, that this particular software is specific to this particular company?
We purchased the Excella software or the rights to it when we were partnered with San Mateo County. We have since separated from San Mateo County and are still utilizing the software, but a number of our other agencies, such as City of Menlo Park, is utilizing the software, and we have invested a lot into this. And after developing the program to where it's at now, we are now moving to a maintenance phase. So part of this RFP is to enter into a maintenance contract. And then the other portion is to perform some cleanup and a couple of other enhancements to move this forward in the plan review portions and a couple other items that we need to be just corrected within the next couple of years.
So I read in the report that you also said that the IT that we have here, the TA that we have here, that is something that they cannot, I guess it's not at what they can actually handle in terms of doing the maintenance and services and that kind of thing.
Correct.
That's why you need to go out.
Correct. They have not been trained as software engineers for this particular program, and they're at their bandwidth. So that was one of the reasons we chose this, is so that it did not put undue burden on our IT.
So there's no proprietary rights or things of that nature on the manipulating of the software that this particular company have.
So Excella has proprietary rights to their software. We actually have proprietary rights to our module that we've built within it.
Okay. And neither one of them kind of will block each other in terms of whatever you want to do or need to do?
Well, that's why we need a maintenance contract so that our development will continue to work with their software. So
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, Virginia, did you want to make a motion?
Sure, I'll move to approve the finance or to approve the recommendation from the finance committee to direct the fire chief to solicit responses from qualified proposers to submit a proposal to the fire district to complete Excel permit software technical support and enhancements.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? And Michelle, would you call the vote?
Yes, if there's any public comments, please raise your hand or hit *9. Seeing none, Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano. Director,
You made it, Rob.
Direct,
Rob took
Aye.
a hiatus
you.
there for a minute.
and Director McLaughlin.
Aye.
thank you.
All right, thank you, John. All right.
Hey,
number
Director McLaughlin, if this is Steve again, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just a quick comment on the item you just voted on, just to support Chief Johnston's comment. The procurement policy does not require the board to authorize RFPs. And just to clarify that you would ordinarily be brought items to approve when there is a contract and a financial expenditure. So just to clarify that aspect of the procurement policy.
All right, thank you for that. Which leads, is a nice segue into our next item. Adopt a resolution approving amendments to the purchasing and contracting procedures policy. Chief Schaefer, do you want to address that?
Yeah, thank you, President McLaughlin, members of the board. Back in March of this year, the board adopted a new purchasing policy and contract procedures, which took the fire chief's ability to procure items up to $100,000 and brought it down to $25,000. I'm asking the board to bring that back up to the $100,000. The 25 has definitely created a lot of inefficiencies at the staff level, and unfortunately has caused some roadblocks to us getting some things done. So I'm not sure that that was the intent, but that was the outcome. So I'm just respectfully requesting that we bring that purchasing policy back up to the level that it was back in March.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Chief Schaefer?
I have one.
Chuck?
Yeah, on page 78, that is the front page of the staff report, under discussion, the second paragraph, it makes reference to routine purchases. And I'm open to looking at a difference, change in procedure regarding routine purchases. But one of the reasons this was changed, frankly, and I don't mean to speak ill of the dead, but is there was, in my opinion, an abuse of expenditure on something that I don't consider routine. And in fact, something that the board had discussed and, in my opinion, had indicated that they did not want to pursue. And so I guess I'd like to hear, it's a question saying, how can we have the things that are routine go through up to a higher limit, but the things that are brand new kinds of expenditures that aren't approved, and I consider $100,000 a major expenditure, how do we have some review on that and avoid the abuse that I saw happen in the past? What can we do to the policy where routine could go through, but something new and different somehow was stopped?
Director Bernstein, if that question is directed at me, I'm not familiar with what abuse you're speaking of. But I can tell you that I think it's just a matter of if you feel that there was abuse before, all I can do is ask you for your trust in me using good judgment and good decision-making to make decisions on what we're going to purchase based on budgeted items and what the district needs to continue to function. I guess in the end, you're just going to have to trust that I'm going to make a good decision.
Jim?
Well, again, I have to be clear here that this in no way relates to you personally or anything like that. So you know that. But frankly, I hate to say it, I lost the trust, and I'm not, and I guess I'm asking you, is there any way we could somehow make a distinction between things that could be controversial and things that are, as you say, routine?
I'm not sure as to what would be controversial in your eyes, or maybe one of the other directors' eyes.
Let me give you an example. Let's say hypothetically that we owned a house and we were going to tear it down, and so we didn't want to remodel it. And something that remodel expenditure of $125,000 or something. In a situation like that, how could we have had some oversight on that? How could we have some oversight on something like that? I would consider the remodeling of a house not a routine matter. Is there any way we can make that distinction between something like that, which I would consider not routine, and something like renewing the contract for an alarm company that we've had for 10 years?
I don't know what kind of verbiage I could put in there that would suffice for what you're explaining. I think once again, I think it's going to be trust in me and then trust in the fire chief that the five of you are going to be hiring in the very near future, and keeping an eye on what's purchased and seeing if there's something there that piques your interest that you feel shouldn't be purchased or was not within the guidelines of what you set. I would say that would be the proof. Unfortunately, after the fact, but I think that it's such a wide range, it'd be difficult to get your arms around it.
Chuck, if
Jim?
yeah, Robert, could you? Rob.
Yeah. Me or Robert?
No, Bob. Robert.
Okay. There are three areas I want to focus on, and if you could help me out, Chief, in terms of understand, and hopefully it gets to what maybe somewhat Chuck is kind of making reference to, and yeah, and I think abuse is all depend on what your limit is, what you consider a limit is in terms of beyond that it's abuse, but there's three categories as you mentioned that in your report you talked about. Proceeds with for small projects. You talked about also there are routine agreements. And then you talked about the other category, proceeds approval for purchases. I think in terms of understanding what are the current projects that you have that you see this small projects you have right now that you see that you have to kind of move on, because I know every time if it takes a month, come to the board, you got to get approval, the cost goes up the way that, especially if it has to do with real estate or construction, etc. like that. If you can kind of give me a sense of understanding what those small projects are, and then also as well as any kind of maybe routine agreements, because there are agreements that come up like this software we just got to approve. And every year, if we stay with this one company, that particular cost is going to come up. And if we talk about that cost is, going to end up being $200,000, which it says budgeted right now, then that's going to be an ongoing cost that's going to be there in that $200,000. So I consider that kind of will be a routine. And I know we have bills like that come through. And the last part of being able to look at giving some kind of examples of purchases that are now that is pending, that need to be moved upon, that may not necessarily, they will fall in certain income or dollar amount category now as well as in the future, that you need to try to get settled before next month. Can you give me a sense of, in those categories, what's on the plate now and the kind of a on the plate dollar amount?
So Director Jones, thanks for your question. I have an invoice on my desk for, I think it's $31,000 for iPads, and it's for the tablet command, the two-way tablet command for all of our engines. Under the current purchasing policy, I can't pay that without a board report, so I held off until tonight's meeting. And if need be, I'll write a board report for our next meeting. Unfortunately, I've been in this position for all of 20 days, so I don't have a great history of, be able to give you the examples that you're asking for. If I had my staff, because when I talk to my staff and I ask them, what can I do to help you be more efficient? How can we make, Menlo Fire run smoother? A lot of the answers revolved around the purchasing policy and the excess work that they have to go through to spend their budgeted monies. And unfortunately, maybe there was something in the past that the board was not happy with. But I can tell you that I'm hoping that you wouldn't come across that in the future. I can't guarantee it, but I can tell you that I use good sound decision making and typically have a good plan on what we're going to be purchasing. And I know the staff feels the same way. So I don't think that you're going to see anything that strikes out to you that is something that should not have been purchased or something was purchased in haste and wasn't thought about. I just feel that the staff is having to do a lot more groundwork to make what we consider simple purchases is the answers I was getting. So I was just trying to create some efficiencies.
Mm-hmm. So you
No, I'm sorry, Robert.
So one last follow-up on that, Chief. So you're saying that when you say that the staff has to do groundwork, are you referring to added research and paperwork in order to kind of to get ready to present that to the board for approval? Is the kind of groundwork you're talking about, which is wasted time, staff time at that point, if you being at the $25,000 level approval versus having some other administrative dollar amount, the 100,000 that you talked about, or somewhere thereabouts. I think part of the phobia that can get relieved, I think, is understanding a little bit about those critical items that you mentioned that is important to be able to kind of move quickly on and not become one of those employers that's always late on the payment kind of thing. So that's one thing that I think we got to kind of figure out how to resolve, to have people who are scared at the 25,000 or the 100,000 level try to get to a certain point that they feel comfortable with. And I know it's going to be a kind of a last minute thing but I think at some point, because I don't know if there is a number that anybody is going to feel comfortable with, but I think somewhere there has to be some type of level of confidence, as you mentioned, in your ability to be able to see this, to move forward without always having to look over the shoulder and get someone's approval on. But also, I think it's important to know that there is a check and balance. The board is always playing in order to try to make sure that things are within the parameters in which makes their I don't know what the word I'm looking for right now, fiduciary obligation to the district come true. So I don't know where that balance is at this point, but I do know that as a chief administrator, that these bills come through and you have to pay them. And we don't deal with small $10,000 items all the time. And I know that's the dilemma. And that's why I looked at those three different categories, some categories are more important, like purchasing a truck, for example. I mean, that's no small potato, but, and that's where things like that has to come to the board. So I don't know if board members have ideas about what those categories that makes them feel comfortable or not comfortable in terms of voting for, giving a spending authority on, but we need to get to that point so that whether it's you, chief, or this new chief we're looking for to come in, can have the flexibility to be able to feel good about, safe about those areas they can make expenditures on without having to, in a timely manner, then having to come back to the board. So anyway, that's enough of that speech.
Rob?
Thank you, Jim. Chief Schaefer, you've been chief 20 days, you said?
20 days.
28 days. Oh, okay. Thank you.
No, 20, 20.
20 days. Okay. So, I want to give you and the district, because I want you to succeed as fire chief. And you're asking for this. And not only are you asking this for yourself, but you're asking for this to assist your staff in the orderly operation of the district. I think we all know why you went down to $25,000. And there isn't anything that I know of that would preclude me from not approving this for you. Okay, so I want to help you and the district to go forward. And I'm in favor of this. Thank you, Chief.
I just want to weigh in here and just say, for me, this is a relationship issue. I will express that anything that is not routine, and I can attach a dollar amount to it, but I'd say anything north of $25,000, I trust the chief to bring it forward to us in, I can't imagine it being so urgent that it would fall outside of a meeting, but in the monthly chief's report, and I think the iPads are a good example. Hey, this extraordinary expense came up. It was $35,000, and I approved it. So I feel comfortable, raising the limit to 100,000. And I'll just say, my expectation is that the chief would inform us of extraordinary purchases or things that are out of the routine. So I support it. Any more on this issue, or Chuck?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a little slow to come to the table on this, but just because I felt burned in the past, but I don't want to create organizational inefficiencies here. I think the only real concern here are things that happen with no advance notice on it. In general, I think purchases of over $25,000, we'd have at least 30-day notice that this is a purchase that we'd like to make at some point. So it seems to me, maybe we could experiment with that, whereby it could go to the finance committee or it come to the whole board, either way, but where just a list of any purchases in excess of $25,000, I'm not talking about to be voted upon, I'm just talking about notification. These are the anticipated purchases for the next 30 days. And come to either the committee, finance committee, or to the whole board, and just take a look and see if there's anything. And I feel more comfortable, if we had some way to at least have knowledge to say, whoa, wait a second, what's going on here? And at this point, we don't have any way of doing that. So, I know something can come up at the last minute, but I'll go back to the water tender. That was something, we got to have it. But you know what? It seems like we've known that water tender has been leaking for about 3 years. We've known that we needed a new one. I don't see why we couldn't have had a 30-day notice about that. We all approved it. We all supported it. Anyway, I'd like to find a way where somehow, Jim, like you said, it could be in the chief's report to the whole board. It could be to the finance committee anyway. But I think any expenditures above $25,000, I would like to see us have a notification on in advance.
See, do we have, has anyone made a motion to adopt this?
I'll make a motion on one I ever made tonight.
Well, I have a comment after Robert's motion.
I want to make a motion if I may.
Yeah, please do.
Okay,
I'll
to
second
adopt,
Rob's motion.
what was that, Rob?
I'll second your motion, Rob.
Let's
made
let
the
it make it
motion.
Okay, let's get everybody get a chicken in the pot. How about that? You know, she's like that. I make a motion to adopt the resolution approving amendments to the purchasing and contracting procedure policy. That's the
I'll
motion.
second that. But I do
Oh,
have
Rob.
just a quick,
Right.
Virginia, go ahead.
well, I just want us as board members to be careful too that, yeah, I mean, I understand that some of us have lost trust in, well, the former chief. But there are just some things that, you know, operationally and being on the ground that are things that are going to confront the chief and his chief officers and, you know, that we might not know about. And there might not be a lot of time. I mean, some of the delays and the efficiencies that Chief Schaefer wants to ameliorate is, you know, hopefully will be done by this motion. But I also think the relationship is going to be important. But I also trust that, you know, we're not on the ground as board members and we don't see the things that our chief sees. And so I just want us to be mindful of the fact that, you know, they're doing things, I think, for the best of the community's needs. I mean, I know that there's contention and controversy over the house next to Station 77. But, you know, the feedback that we received from the city of Menlo Parks, well, the city council members, a couple of them, including the one who represents the Bellhaven area, was that the house looked run down. And I don't think that that's what public property should be. So I'm just saying that I think that trust is important, but also understanding that operations is, you know, something that we should not be involved in at that granular level, and that we have to trust the chief and, you know, trust that he's going to spend the money in the way that is appropriate for the public benefit.
All right, any other questions or discussion on this item?
Yeah, I just want to counter what Virginia said. I don't think the chief knows better whether we should spend $125,000 to remodel a house that's going to be torn down than the board does. And I don't care how much operation experience, firefighting experience, emergency medical experience someone has, that doesn't give them expertise on the ground relating to expenditures on a house. So I don't think that expertise exists. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I respect that. Thanks, Chuck.
And if there's nothing further, Michelle, please take the vote.
Yes, we just-
After asking for public comment.
Thank you. If there's public comment, please raise your hand or click *9. Seeing none, I just also want to confirm Director Crawley seconded the motion and not Director Solano, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And Director Bernstein.
I'll vote no on this, and I'd like the minutes to reflect that I don't think there's enough safeguards in the motion as it stands.
Okay. Director Jones,
Yes.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right. That takes us to item 11, approve a resolution authorizing the surplus of the 2017 Dodge Grand Caravan Passenger SXT. So, Chief Schaefer, is that, are you, can you present that?
Happy to do so. We also have Steve Strom, our fleet supervisor, is on the call if we had any questions for him. But based on the surplus policy and based on the lack of need for that specific vehicle within the district, the staff report shows all the information as far as the company that wants to purchase it and the relative value of the vehicle. And as I said, we do not have a need for it here at the district anymore. So we'd like to sell it to the vendor and let someone else use it that may need it, as opposed to us keeping it.
Any questions or discussion on this issue?
Yeah.
I think it's Virginia's hand first.
Oh, I was just gonna make the motion to approve to approve the resolution authorizing the surplus of the 2017 Dodge Grand Caravan SXT, but I can wait.
Chuck, did you have a question or comment?
I do have a comment. This reads a little bit, let me say, I'm in favor of making it surplus and selling it. So that concept is fine. But I'm a little concerned. It feels like we're dealing with a sole source here, almost like a sole source contract. And it seems to me that we should have bids or offer it to more than just one vendor to ensure that we're getting the highest price that we can. So I'd like to see us offer it to more than one vendor here.
Chief, can you address that point, or?
I can. I'm not familiar with who the mechanical division went to find vendors that were willing to purchase this van. I believe that the vendor is the maker of the van. When we purchased the van used and we had it outfitted, I believe this is the vendor that outfitted it. So obviously they know the work that was already put into the van. I'll ask Steve Strom, our mechanic, if he has anything to add on that note.
All right, good evening. Thank you very much. Yes, that is correct. I was asked to contact Sacramento Van Mobility, who we have been dealing with the whole time. And due to the fact that they know what the van is and what it basically, we put in a lot of holes and things through adding code 3 lights and putting in the radios. They know that they're going to have to do some body work and such. Otherwise, I use a company called Gov Deals, and that would be an auction site. And I would think that we will get much less if we try to do it that way. So that's the reason why we went ahead with Sacramento Van. Thank you.
You know, Stephen, I just have a question for you. Are we
Yes.
under any obligation to expose this to the market, or can we are we free to sell it to this particular shop?
You
I
are
don't-
free to sell it to this particular shop. Oh, sorry. Did you
No,
mean
no,
Steve
go
Strom or
right
Steve
ahead.
Miller? Sorry.
I'm sorry,
Yes,
Steve
go
Miller.
right ahead,
Steve
Steve.
Miller. Sorry.
You're free to sell this to whom you like. The district has a surplus policy, which requires the board, as is being asked tonight, to declare a property surplus. But the policy sets forth the methods of sale that the chief determines what the best way to dispose of the surplus after the board authorizes the definition of a piece of property as surplus. But one of the permitted methods is a negotiated sale with a single purchaser, if that's the most appropriate method.
All right.
Jim, I have a question.
Rob?
Yeah, hey, thank you, Steve, for preparing this for us. Down on this attachment B towards the bottom, it says payment, and it says customer trade-in, 2013 Chrysler Town and Country, light, approximately 118,000 miles. Was that the first vehicle that we purchased for the chief?
Yes, I believe so. Because it was over 100,000 on that first one we traded back in.
So we still have that vehicle still in our possession?
Yes, we sold that back to them. We used that vehicle to buy this one that we currently have.
Oh, so we use that as a trade-in, huh?
Yes.
And we got, I can't make out
Yeah.
we got $8,000 for that, Steve, for that trade-in?
I don't have that paper in front of me. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And that was retrofitted the same way that this 2017 Dodge vehicle was?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. This company knows people that need these kinds of vehicles. I'm afraid that if we were to go on an auction site, people might just take that van. I've had other things. They'll use that van for something else when it's already set up for a handicapped individual. And so I think it would be best for them to find somebody that could use this.
So then this vehicle was the first vehicle, this 2013 was purchased from the same vendor?
Yes,
Okay, thank you, Steve.
you're welcome.
All right, Virginia, I think you've made a motion.
Yeah, I'll say it again if you want. I mean, it's basically to approve the resolution authorizing the surplus of the 2017 Dodge Grand Caravan Passenger SXT.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
It moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Is there any public discussion or public comment, Michelle?
Anybody wishing to provide public comment, please raise your hand or hit *9. I do not see any.
All right, please call the vote.
Director Bernstein,
I'm going to vote no, and I'd like the minutes to reflect that my rationale is that I think it's good business procedure to offer things to more than one purchaser.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right.
Seems like we still made a good deal on it. I mean, on that price.
It's a pretty good return.
I just
Yeah.
want to say, thank you very much, directors. I'm gonna take off. Thank you
Yeah,
very
thank
much.
you, Steve.
All right, have a
Thank
good, have a very nice evening.
Bye, Steve. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
you're very
Steve.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, that brings us to reports and requests. Item 12, committee reports. Chuck, you want to report out on the finance?
I think everything that we were talking about in Finance Committee appeared on the agenda tonight.
Okay. Virginia, EPREP.
Yeah, we had a great meeting and just the volunteers, so most of the volunteer groups were there to give an update. I was very glad to see that Ever Rodriguez from North Fair Oaks was there to give an update and just to kind of share what he needed. And I think Chief Schaefer, it sounds like Ryan and Andres are giving the North Fair Oaks group what they need, which is basically basic Red Cross ready kind of classes just for individual families. I know that they really want to get some of this basic training, so I'm very happy to be working with them. Constant and Associates also made a presentation, and it sounds like we're going to be getting, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Schaefer, the surveys out from, they're going to be distributing the surveys for us to take. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if you get a survey, please take it. It's for the independent. It's for the independent audit for the Office of Emergency Management. So thank y'all for your help in advance. Robert, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't.
Thank
I don't have
you.
anything to add.
HR committee, the two items that we addressed this month made it to the agenda. The job description revision and then the CalPERS excess benefit plan. So that was presented. All right, liaison.
Jim,
reports.
wait, Jim, can I
Sorry,
just, I
Virginia?
forgot one thing this just came in, so I'm sorry. This
Sure,
just
sure.
came in a few days ago. Tom Pressing, who heads up ADAPT, said, he wrote to everyone saying that he would be kind of rotating off or retiring from ADAPT and probably CERT as well. So I wanted everyone on the board to know that that was happening and to wish him well if he reaches out to you or if you see him or if you want to reach out to him. He's done so much to get preparedness done in his community and, tried to work with our CERT groups as well. So I just want to thank Tom. I know he's not here tonight, but if he decides that he's going to listen to this meeting, I want to thank him for all the work that he's done to help the district and our residents be prepared and safe.
Virginia, he's not leaving till December 31 also.
I know, but I just wanted everyone to know that he did send an email saying that that was his intent and that's what he plans to do.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Strategic planning, yeah.
Rob, strategic planning?
Yep. Chuck and I met. We went over the request for proposal for the management audit. The chief put it in his report. Next month, we're going to have the San Mateo County OES come in and give us a presentation on the computer aided dispatch system that's we've been working with. And then we also discussed the drone program and scheduling maybe an informational or an update on the progress of our drone program and what it can do, and the information that we can obtain, and some issues about the privacy aspect. So that's it, Jim. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rob.
Chuck, you want to add anything else, Chuck?
I have nothing to add.
Okay, thank you, Chuck.
All right, liaison reports. Rob?
Yeah, I attended the fire districts of California, special districts of California meeting. As everyone knows, I'm on the executive board for that. They discussed some of this state of California funding, and I forwarded that to the chief relative to when the budget was passed. They're looking at $3 billion to provide fire agencies statewide concerning wildfires, and specifically for special districts, there's something like 300 million. So I passed that information to the chief and to Jim so that they would be aware of it. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other liaison reports? Virginia?
It's nothing relevant per se for the fire district, but the town of Atherton had a public meeting about their burglaries and, public safety within their community. So I attended that, and I just wanted everyone to know that, residents of Atherton are concerned about that. So if you hear anything of concern, that's the reason.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to item 14, reports, requests of directors.
Jim?
Robert?
I don't know if Michelle is there, but I have a letter that I need to read to the board that is deeply concerning me at this point in time. So,
Michelle, do you have it that you can put it on the screen, Michelle?
Yes, if you give me one moment, I can get that on the screen.
Okay.
Can you see it?
yeah,
Yeah.
we can see it. So somebody can read it along with it, or just let me, I'll just read it so you can if you can just open your mind and ears to it, it would be great. It's a letter from me as one of the directors of Menlo Park Fire District, dated today, July 20th. And the subject is, which is my request, director's request to this board. And the letter states as, I start off, said, Dear President McLaughlin and fellow Menlo Park Fire Protection District board members, I'm writing to the board because I'm deeply concerned about the integrity of the process we are undergoing to select a new fire chief. Integrity to me means doing what is right in a fair manner. My concern pertains to the quality or the lack of fairness in our candidate selection process before, during, and after the screening process. One of the highest forms of integrity to me is showing fairness or being open and honest when communicating with others. All the applicants applying for the new fire chief position should be held to the same criteria and standards. If we do not adhere to a standardized process during this selection, the result may be unfavorable to the Menlo Park Fire Protection District. After reading an email from Mr. Daryl Abernott, and I think Daryl sent it to all of us, I question the screening methodology and process. As a board, we should not put ourselves in this type of position because the results may not prove favorable. Therefore, I am requesting that the board of directors convene and hold a special closed session meeting before interviewing any of the candidates to discuss the concerns expressed in Mr. Abernott's letter and how we would proceed forward. And I say this because what I read was pretty damning to the process that we have went through so far. And and I'm not saying, and I think the applicant is saying that this is not something he normally do, is send letters. But when I read the letter, it kind of confirms to me the possibility that this district could may have be in jeopardy, or the process that we have set up to hire chief will expose us to some liabilities we may not necessarily want to be exposed to. And I know that it may not necessarily sound plausible, but I have experienced this myself on this board from the day one that I came on board, of the attitudes that was presented, not by everybody, but what happened. And it seems as if, I'm the kind of person that I don't scream loud, but I think that we are just riding on air right now that can get let out of the balloon real quick. If we don't look at this situation and take it seriously, that this applicant is claiming that he's been unfairly screened in this process for the new chief. And I went back, I looked at all the applicants that are there, and clearly I'm trying to understand with that person's qualification and some of the qualification of people that actually got on there, there's a stark difference. And I would like to discuss it in a closed session meeting and really get into it with the board, because there's more to this than I don't know if people really see. I hope you don't take this lightly, but it's pretty serious to me. And I think he needs to have a fair answer from us, because the answers seem like they got back to him or was given to him. It's wrought with I think inaccurate information. And if this is what we're going to put out to candidates who now did not get through the initial cut, then we are truly leaving ourselves up for some type of liability. Because I just think this it's kind of unfair. And I think we got a little bit more integrity about ourselves than what is being exhibited now through this process. So I'm requesting that we have a special closed session meeting before we get into these interviews. And we need to discuss how we're going to move forward.
All right.
That's my request.
Any questions or comments? Chuck?
As I read the letter, it seemed to me that the issue comes up when we use an intermediary to assist us in the selection.
Chuck,
process.
if,
Oh,
pardon me for interrupting you, but I would like to confine ourselves to the proposal to hold a special.
okay,
meeting.
I will address that. I'm sorry. I was just saying that it'll just take me 1 second. I'm not going to go into the history. I just want to say before we had it, so I think it's important for every board member to read every single application that we received so that we have firsthand knowledge. That's what I wanted to say. And I would request that before we have this special meeting, that all the board members look at all of them, because only when we see it with our own eyes can we know what we think of what's been said. And I've said from the beginning that I want to look at all of them, and I intend to do that. And I'm just encouraging the other board. Otherwise, we're just talking without any basis in, no foundation in fact.
If I don't know if there's reference to me, check it out, and I appreciate that. I have taken the opportunity to read every last one of them, twice. And then I looked at Mr. Abercrombie. His was the first one, and I'm asking myself, master's degree.
Robert, I think we're.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, we're trying to get it closer.
No problem. No problem.
I've taken the opportunity to review them all as well, and I think Chuck's point is well taken. I think we can have a more informed discussion if everyone can get over to see Francine. She's the custodian of those records, and get over and have a look at them. So I would just like to move this along. I'd like to ask Michelle to poll the members. Starting tomorrow, let's find a date at the first opportunity to hold this special meeting, and let's find a date and time that works for everyone. I think we'll probably want to include our selected representative that's conducting the search to participate as well, and we'll consider the issues that Robert's raising and any others that associated issues that may come up.
So Jim,
Yes, Virginia.
just to be clear, it'll be the 5 of us and our search firm, correct?
Yes, I imagine Stephen Miller as well.
And okay,
The
perfect.
chief and Francine, I think
Okay.
should be included.
Yeah.
Robert,
No, Chuck, go ahead, Chuck.
Well, I was just going to ask, I mean, given what Robert said and reviewed and so forth, maybe we should have an opportunity to speak as a board before the search team comes in on it, so that we could have kind of an untethered conversation about what we might or might not see or find.
I mean, I'm certainly open to that. I think we're setting ourselves up for a second meeting, which again, I'm fine with that.
Well, even if we had the first hour where it was just the board, I'm just making, yeah. and then-
Yes, I agree with that.
And also with goals that we want to, what do we want to get out of these meetings as well?
Robert, I think you had a comment.
Oh, sorry, Robert.
No, it's okay. Chuck is right. I think this is a board. As a board, we need to look at this, before we start bringing other folks in, because, I done been down this road before, and it can get ugly, and we need to be aware of the issues, and I appreciate even the consideration of board getting together first before bringing the consultant in, because I don't know what kind of relationship they have had in the past, but it seems like whatever it is, it does not fit well with me, and it's we can be exposed in certain exposures that we may not want to really get into. That's all. Just looking out for the best interests of the district and ourselves. but we need to cut this thing and before it gets started. So,
You know, I do wonder if you know, we're going to consider, you know, I've read the applicant's, you know, letter as everyone else has, and yeah, I will just say, I think if we are going to exclude the search firm from that initial meeting, then you know, just be prepared to have a second meeting. If we, you know, come up with a list of questions or issues that we want the search firm to address, do we want them to do it, you know, immediately after any meeting that we have, or would it be on a separate date? I pose that as a question. I'm trying to be efficient with our time and here, and I don't object to going either way. But I do think if we exclude them from the first meeting, then we're setting ourselves up for a second, which again is fine.
Can I just put out there that, is it possible to have a special closed session meeting that starts out with just the board, and then later in the meeting have, you know, figure out an hour in, then you can bring in the consultant?
I think that's what I suggest.
That's what I did. That's what I would do. No, meaning on the same day, Jim.
Right.
you know, I'm
The same
okay with, I'm okay with that, but I don't do speed dating too well. And I think it, you know, the issues need to be flushed out so everybody can see it if there are any issues. So either way is okay with me.
I will say this, I won't set a hard time to bring in the search firm, you know, just to give us the freedom. I don't want us to, our discussion to bump up against the clock. I want it to be full, and if it takes an hour, if it takes 2 hours, whatever it takes. And I'll ask the search firm to be on call, and we'll bring them in when we're ready to bring them in, rather than according to some rigid schedule. Right. Anything else on this matter? We'll get it scheduled at the first opportunity, and so, all right, if there's something further, then Michelle, any public comment?
And the president's report was next. Did you have anything? for
Oh,
that?
thank you. I would just say, if you get a chance, Michelle and I just played a pivotal role in getting the plaque done for the museum at Station 6. I want to thank her for her efforts on that. She, you know, was working with the vendor, and I also want to recognize all the hard work you did on the pinning ceremony and the events that we had for the chief. They were, you know, they were marvelous. They, you know, were very well done, and I think were an appropriate send off. If you get a chance to go by and see the plaque, it's again, I think I like everything about it, the scale of it, and the way it's posted and where it's posted. I talked to Michelle about trying to schedule some kind of appropriate unveiling ceremony where you can bring back Chief Schaufelhomen and do it right. So we will keep you all abreast of that. That's all I have. Public comment, Michelle?
If anybody has any public comment, please raise your hand or hit *9. And seeing none, thank you, Director McLaughlin, for that acknowledgement too. And we're ready for the adjournment.
Okay, a motion to
I'll
adjourn?
make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
I think Director McLaughlin was second, yes?
Okay.
No, Chief Jones, or Director
No.
Jones.
Okay.
I thought that was you, Jim. Okay.
It's okay.
All right. We'll share that one.
We got you,
All right.
Director Jones.
All right,
Okay.
call the vote, please.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
I
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right, good night, everyone.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Good night.
Bye.